Welcome to our Amud Yomi Shiur. We'll learn one Amud per day. Maseches Bava Metzia. Welcome to everybody here in Ahavas Shalom Shul. Ahavas Shalom is in Nachal Lachish 33 Bet Shemesh. And welcome to our subscribers at YouTube. Welcome to people in Kol HaLashon and Torah anytime that watch us. And today's Amud is Kuf Aleph. Amud Aleph will be the page. But we are right now still at the end of Kuf Amud Beis in the Mishnah. So let's go. Says the Mishnah, Moicher Zeisov le'etzim ve'osu pochus mervis l'seya. Let's start with a case. A Moicher Zeisov le'etzim. A person who owns a field with olive trees there. So he sold the olive trees to his friend in order to burn them. In other words, I'm not selling you the zayis for its content, for the zaysim, for the olives they're going to grow. I'm selling you the trees, so you should go and do whatever you want with the actual wood. Yeah, it can be used as good firewood. So, in other words, the expectation is that sooner or later, those zaysim will be out of my sight. I'm not playing as if I'm the owner of the field. You get the zaysim not in order to get the yield, just in order to get the actual wood, and you can burn it, do whatever you want with it. Meanwhile, the guy was holding back, meaning the buyer, the osu pochus mervis l'seo, which means, meanwhile, those trees, the olives, they grew. Now, the olives were not amazing. That's case number one. And out of each saw of zaysim, which is the big amount, saw is the second biggest amount of the hierarchy of, saw is, a good few kilos. And out of that saw, the amount of olive that was produced, that was squeezed out, was one revis. One revis is, chat pami, that's a revis, kiddush, yeah. In other words, the olives were not amazing. Those trees were already on the last legs, let's see, let's assume. And out of a saw, only less than revis was produced. Then we say that the owner of the zaysim, he keeps the oil, of which is such a small amount. We assume that the Baal Soda is not makpiranim, doesn't care about it, he is not particular about it, and now less than revis keeps the Baal Hazaysim, even though he didn't really buy it for the olives or the olive oil, he bought it for the wood. He's sort of overstaying his welcome, and still he gets that small amount. Mashain can also revis laso. Let's say now there was a more significant amount. Let's say those olives produced a revis out of an entire saw of zaysim you collected and you squeezed and you made everything in the olive press, came out revis or more, and then we have a discussion. One of them says, listen, these are my zaysim. It's true that you sold it to me in order to just get rid of them and burn them, but lamaisa, as long as I enjoyed it, and as long as it lasted, and my zaysim, my olives, they grew and they produced it, so I get the oil. The other one says, no, my land is the one that produced it. I still own the land. I just sold you the trees. I own the land. You own the tree. It's me, not you. Yechloiku, says the Mishnah, Yechloiku. Is this sumchus again? No, not sumchus. It's not sumchus, says the Tiferes Yisrael. I'll tell you why. Sumchus talks about a case in which we don't know the reality. When we don't know the reality, did the cow give birth in Reuven's possession when it was unpossessed by Reuven or by Shimon? Then we have a suffix, and Sumchus says in case of a technical, real reality question, what really happened, then says Sumchus Ichloku. Here that's not the case. Here the case is each one claims, I brought the flour, you brought the water. I brought the money, you brought the space. I brought the trees, and you brought the land. It's called Zeh v'Zeh Goyrim. Both of them actually have part in it, and that's why we say Echloiku, because they're partners. They really are partners, and that's why Shulchan Aruch here, Shulchan Aruch doesn't paskin like Sumchus when Sumchus argues with Chachomim, and here Shulchan Aruch paskins Echloiku. Again, the basic case was as follows, and we're going to see it in the Gemara. Reuven owns the field, and that field has a lot of trees. Of olive trees. Let's just imagine those olive trees are not doing that great. Comes Shimon, And Shimon says, you know what? I have a profession. I'm a Lag Ba'omer bonfire producer, okay? And I really need a lot of wood. Can I buy those olive trees, which right now are still connected to the ground, and I just disconnect them and I'll buy them just as wood, not in order for what they're going to yield, which is the zaysim, which is the olives. Meanwhile, zaysim grew. Yeah, he took his time. He didn't disconnect. He didn't come and cut it, with the axe the day later. He came 2, 3, 4 months later, whatever. And meanwhile, they were growing. So that's a big question. Yeah, who owns the olives meanwhile? And then we say if the olive produces a small amount, then it belongs to the olive owner. And if they produce a big amount, then they share and they split it. Why? We're going to see in the Gemara. It's a very strange idea. The Gemara is going to explain why. Now we go into a second case. Shotov no Zeisov. Yeah, that's a very interesting physical phenomenon. I actually heard about it. Yeah, happening in reality. Shotov no Zeisov. A person has olive trees, and there was a very, very big storm. I don't mean wind. I mean, there was a very big flood, let's say, and all his Zeisim, his olive trees were flooded, and they ended up when a sonam letoich sdechaveroi. The river took his olive trees and swooshed it and basically moved it away. Yeah, they drifted away and they ended up in his friend's field and started growing there. That can happen. Yeah. The olive trees. The olive trees. Olive trees were eradicated from where they originally were, from Reuven's field, and they made it through wind or water, through whatever UFOs came, whatever happened, and now those trees ended up in Shimon's field. New guest, oops, mishamayim, amoitzi zeisi min hashamayim, and now what? And now those trees are taking root. The second stage in the life, Reuven trees somehow ended up in Shimon's field. Okay, so now we have Reuven's olive trees growing as uninvited guests in Shimon's field, and they start growing. Now it has nothing to do with burning. They just start growing there in their new homes. They made aliyah from Reuven's field to Shimon's field. Yeah. Same argument. Now they really make very nice olives, and they can sell for a lot of money in the market and make unbelievably good oil. And again, the same argument. One of them says, my olive trees are the ones that produced it. The other one says, without my land, you'd be nothing. Yeah, artsy gidlo. My land is the one that actually helped it grow. It sucked the energy. Kachsha de ara. It was my ara. My land is the one that allowed it, gave it the environment and energy to grow. So what are we going to do? Each one claims that all the olives belong to him. Again, it should split it, not because of sumchus, but because they're both right. In other words, it's true. Yeah, they're both partners. Each one, so to speak, invested in the field, in the zaysim. One cannot do without the other, and therefore the split. It sounds simple, but that second case is actually going to be, a bit of an issue, a bit of a roller coaster. But before we have, first of all, there's a queue. I really don't like questions after Mishnah, because usually Gemara talks about it. Let's just, So first of all, we have two cases. Case number one, I'm just repeating it. Yeah. Case number one: a person owns an olive grove, and the olives grow there. The olives are not doing that great anymore. So he sells the olives themselves. He sells the olive trees for wood to Shimon. Says, Shimon, take my olive. You pay me something less than not the expensive price. Take those trees, cut them off, just fell them and get them out of my sight. Meanwhile, Shimon took his time, and what happened? The olive started growing, producing some oil. If it's a small amount of oil that belonged to the olive tree owner, was not really supposed to take oil. He's supposed to just get rid of the wood and get out of sight. And yet, if it's a small amount, then he gets it. If it's a bigger amount, then he split it. Right? That's the first case. Second case of the Mishnah, you have a person who has his olive trees. By some kind of miracle, the river swept them away and made them swim. They drifted all the way into Shimon's field, and they took root there. Actually, that scientifically such things do happen in reality. By wind, some trees can regrow in a new area. Yeah, like that by nature. And what? Now the question is, who's the owner? Now there are very nice olives that grow there. So there too, they go half-half, not because of Suffolk of Sumchus, but because Taka, they both are partners, the partners in the successful business. Questions are kind of welcome now. Says the Heilige Gemara, the Gemara is now asking a question on the first case. Hey Daled, what's Hey Daled? Hey Chidami, what's the case? What exactly is the case of the first case of the Mishnah? What actually took place? Mimanavshach. If the condition was clear, clear conditions, if the owner of the tree, the seller of the trees, was selling the trees just for wood, as wood fire, he says, le'alta, straight away, I want to see you, within, 12 hours, I want those trees out of my sight, cut off, I want to build a hotel here for Ben Azmanim, yeah? I want the trees out, and I want it to be koitzes le'alta, which means that if you overstay welcome, they don't belong to you. Yeah, they have nothing to do with you anymore. They're only yours in order to quickly cut them away and use them as firewood for your Lag Bomer, the other side of town. If that was the case, afilu pochos meravis nami lebala karka, then even if the oil that was produced, the amount was this minuscule amount of one revis out of a whole saw, so what? It should belong to Bala Karka. Because Balakaka would say, listen, as long as you don't cut them, they're not yours. I told you clearly that they're only yours in order to be cut off. But if you overstay welcome, it's not yours for oil. It's yours only for firewood. Yeah, you overstayed your welcome against my will, and you're basically a bit of a schwindler. You're trying to chaparain, and chap another usage of the tree that's not in the contract. That's not honest. And therefore, even one drop of oil should not be yours. They're not yours for oil. They're specifically only yours for wood. Meanwhile, you took your time on purpose or not on purpose. It's not yours. It's still mine. It'll only be yours when you cut them. And even one drop should not be yours. Or the other way. Either omerle, or if you told him alternatively, kol emas de bois koitz. And if you told him, he's a very, very easygoing, he's a laid back guy. Whenever you want, cut them. That old grove, who cares? They're only yours in order to what? To cut them. But you can cut them whenever you want. They are yours. The idea is to cut them off eventually, but I don't mind if you take your time. What's going to happen when you take your time? Don't you know that nature takes its course and the zaysim grow, right? Meanwhile, an olive is produced. If so, afil revis namilabal zaysim. Then even if the oil was revis or more, even if there was significant amount of oil, should go to Bala Zaysim. Because Bala Zaysim was told they're yours to eventually take as what? Firewood. But meanwhile, while they still grow, it can make merry while it's making the olives. So even if it's a big amount, should belong to Bala Zaysim. Because it didn't stipulate only the firewood now. Yeah, do it whenever you want. Whenever I want, divide the Zaysim grew. So the oil should be all belonging to Bala Zaysim completely. And says the Gemara, Loi, Tzricha, our Mishnah, so again, the question is, why did the Mishnah differentiate between a small amount or a big amount? Yeah, if it's illegal to enjoy the oil, then what? Even a small amount should not be enjoyed. Din pruta kadin mea. Yeah, in halacha we don't believe in small amounts. Even one pruta is like din mea. Sanhedrin daf ches amud aleph. Yeah, top of the page. And Mashain can, if you talk about what? Big amounts? So what if it's a big amount? Why? If he allowed him for a long time, then even a big amount should belong to Bala Zaysim because he gave him free range. So what's the story? Why do you differentiate between small and big? Why should that make a difference? Answers the Gemara, Tzricha, the Mishnah did have to say that. The Omar Lei, Stoma. Oh, very good. They were unclear, like all the cases of Nashim Nezikin. Stoma. He said, go get those woods for firewood. And then they went home. He drank his coffee, drank his tea, and goodbye. In other words, we're not clear whether it's only for firewood and I want those trees out of my sight. Or he said, whatever you want. He can give you long range. Which clearly means that the Zaysim growing meanwhile should be yours. They were not clear about it. He left it, open-ended. How urgent is it and how specific he is to just have the trees for fire and not for anything else. It was open-ended. If it's only for firewood or also for other purposes that may grow in between, i.e. the olives, they're not clear about it. Then who has to step in? The halacha. Lahavdil $5 also by law, right? If there's no clear contract, then who decides the law? Lahavdil. Here we have the Torah. Chazal decided and said like this: Pachas meravis loikabdi inchi. Normal people, when it's less than a vis per such an amount of sale, they're not makpid. He has a whole saw of zaysim, poor man, out of an entire saw. That's a big amount, and you only manage to squeeze out one revis. No, just like a kiddush cup. Then people don't really mind it. People don't mind, don't care about that. And the Mishnah, and even if that person does care, but you're a miser, you need a psychologist if you care about one tiny revis, if you didn't make a clear contract. Mashenkin revis, kapdi inchi. Revis is always halachically important. Yeah, I'm sorry, before it was less than revis, even less than revis. Revis or more, we know in halacha, in ashkofa, in the Jewish mind always relates to revis. That's always the choshev shiur when it comes to drinks, to liquids. If you made a revis or more, then the Baal Soda has the right to tell him, excuse me, I makpid, and he would be right. I care about that. Yeah, there was no clear agreement that you should get the zaysim. There's no clear agreement the other way. As long as there's no clear agreement that the zaysim should be yours, and you started to make money here on my expense, then what would be the halacha? They go half. And what? The Baal Zaysim, of course, deserves, because the Zaysim are his at the end of the day, but you only get half. The Baal Karka also gets half. The Seder. 1 second, please. We're going to finish the topic soon. Omar B'Shimon Pazi. B'Shimon Pazi is telling us another important halachic detail. And as we said yesterday, everything boils down to money. Omar B'Shimon Pazi. The Ravis She'omu, that Ravis that they said in the Mishnah, once it's Ravis, you go half with the owner of the olives and the owner of the land. Chutz minoitzo. That is only after you deducted the expenses of the work. Misken, he took a whole saw of zaysim. He had to pay workers to pick the olives. He had to pay workers be'atzirosim to press the olives. That's money, right? So if he made a revis, the olive owner made a revis net profit after you deducted the expenses, that revis is considered to be a whole revis that you should divide and should be cared about, and you should divide it with the Baal Karka. But if it's revis, physically revis, but really it's not a pure revis, because that revis cost me, so money-wise, I have less than revis, because that revis, yeah, has really financially I have less oil, because in this cup I have all the expenses I had to pay the workers. So Mimer in such a case is considered as less than revis, and he doesn't have to give anything to Baal Karka. Yes. So Baruch mentioned here the point during our question session that you're not allowed to cut a tree. That's true. It's a very big, both in Bava Kama and Bava Basra. Root 3, Lo shochav shikchas bria like the katz teina shaloi bizmono. Shikchas, my son, says one of the Meroim, he only died because he cut off a fig tree before its time. So you're right, there are solutions. Either the tree is very, very old and not going to yield anything anymore, or you got it more than 3 tefachim above the ground, so it's going to regrow dafka better. Maybe that was a story. No, nice question and nice point. Thank you. Oh, now we're getting into the not new. Now we're going to the second part of the Mishnah. What did the second part of the Mishnah say? And before we start the svaras, I'm going to tell you 2 things. Please, no questions until we finish the whole inyan, because these are svaras that you have to only understand when all svaras are mentioned together. Secondly, let's now go, before we go into all the svaras here of Baal HaSoda and Baal HaZaysim, let's go into the mind of the owner of the field. You own a field. Now that field is right now empty, but that field is a field which is potentially meant for trees. You are going to plant olive trees, fig trees, whichever fruit trees, and be mefarnes your family and mekayim yishuv Eretz Yisrael if you're in Eretz Yisrael, whatever. All of a sudden, one sunny day, you see those trees flying in the air or the trees coming with the river, and they plant themselves in your field, and they feel comfortable in the new home, and you're not saying anything to the tree owner. The tree owner knows about it, and you know that he knows. There's no question here of that. Don't ask me questions from Cheskas Sabatim, because the fact that you keep quiet and you see the trees grow, what does that mean? Why don't you tell him, get these trees out of here? I was going to plant cherry trees. I'm American, yeah, cherry tree dafka, yeah, and v'chule, yeah. Why? The assumption is because you want to gain out something out of that. You're not a big Baal Chesed. You're not a B'Srol Salanter. Why do you agree to those uninvited guests, the trees, which there was no agreement about them? He never asked you. Yeah, it's a Kodesh Baruch Hu who brought them. You're the owner of the field, and you have these new guests call those trees, and they take root, and you seem to be happy about it. And what? The assumption is, the first assumption here is you assume you're going to get at least 50%. You agree to those trees being there again instead of other trees you would have bought or you would have started to plant because you say to yourself, okay, I'm a nice host because I'm willing to go at least half, or maybe 100% if he's more greedy, or maybe he's right. That's the hashkafa rishono. That's the muskal rishon. A person sitting quietly watching the uninvited trees grow. Mistama, he's agreeing. Again, it's nothing to do with Cheskes also. Cheskes is a question of who's the owner. Here, we know who the owner is. We know he owns the trees, I own the land. There's no question of ownership. Why do I agree that they should take space in my other potential, yeah, in a land which is potentially good for other trees? Why? Mistama, I want to make a profit. That should be our understanding before we even begin. And I'm avoiding a lot of questions here. Comes the Gemara and tells us as follows. What did we say again in the halacha? That if the Zaysim were planted in the tree of the other guy, of Mr. Landowner, Shimon's trees are in Reuven's land, what do we say? Half. He says, it's my trees that yielded those beautiful, amazing olives. Your trees? Your trees cannot grow in the air, and they're not hydroponics either. They grow in my beautiful lush ground, or they're taking from the power of the ground. So what? So what do we say? Split it. You're both right. Like the Rav told the husband and the wife, you're right, and you're both right. Everyone's right. You do go half, pashut. Now the Gemara comes to limit that issue. Before we continue, one more introduction. We all know about the mitzvah of Orlo in Parshas Kedoshim, and if a tree, any tree in Eretz Yisrael in the first 3 years of its life, don't touch, don't enjoy, don't have any benefit. Also, b'achila v'ano. What happens in the 4th year? Neta revai. From the 5th year onwards, do whatever you want, as long as you take meiser, make a bracha. Now, what happens if a tree restarts its life? In other words, a tree grew by Reuven for 15, 20, 25 years, then it flew, or maybe human beings did it, and it was uprooted from its first place, and now making aliyah, the absorption center in someone else's field. Do we reset it now? And we say now that 15 years old tree is really 0 years old because it started new life in a new place? Depends. Says the Mishnah at the beginning of Orla. This is all introduction. With all things we have to know before we start the sugya. Yeah, we have to get the equipment before we go on the road. Depends. If that tree came completely bare, completely exposed with all the roots, you uprooted it, the roots are all exposed. Yeah, when it's like that, without any ground on it, it can't survive. Now you planted that 50 years old tree in a new land, reset, it's now celebrating its 0th birthday, and you have to wait 3 years. It makes a lot of sense, because now it was in the air without any help from anywhere. It can't grow like that. The only power that helps it grow is what? The new land. So it's a whole new start. Yeah, now you're a new tree, 0 years old, and therefore you have to keep now 3 years hands off. However, if the tree has what halacha calls gush, a gush, which means a bit of land around the roots, and that piece of that amount of dirt is sufficient for it to grow. Yeah, it could get out of the ground with some ground around it. From now on, we're going to call it gush. And if you don't know what gush means, there are many gush etzion, gush dan. Yeah, in other words, there's a big cloud of earth that surrounds the roots. Thank you. Surrounds the roots and provides them enough nourishment, enough growth. And then with that bit of earth around it, you planted it in a new field. Then how old is the tree? 50 years old. It's going to become 51 soon, midlife crisis. In other words, it's not called Orla. Yeah, because it came already ready-made with the ground of the previous owner. That is something which we have to now take into account big time. With that in mind, let's start today's Amud. Omar Ule, Omar Rish Lakish. Says Ule on behalf of Rish Lakish. That is only true. The what? What did the Mishnah say? That they split it. My trees, your land, half half. Loishonu, that is only true that they split it. Elasheneku begushein. They were nekar, they were eradicated, they were cut off, not cut off, they were eradicated, they were uprooted with the gush around them. Yeah. Uleachar sholosh. After 3 years, soon we're going to see what that means. In other words, 3 years after it's been in the new field, only then we're going to start splitting those trees half-half. You're going to see the better now. The second side will explain in the first one. Aval, however, betoich sholosh, within the first 3 years, a kol shel balazeisin. If that tree came ready-made with a gush around it, and it flew or came with a river, whoop, into the field of the new guy, the first 3 years, it's exclusively only solely belonging to the owner of the tree, not the owner of the ground. Why? The Omer lay, because Mr. Tree owner tells ground owner, he kept telling me, I would have had my other trees here. Why did those trees cut? No. If you would have started your new trees, your netiois, it's called, your saplings, if they would be here all new within the first 3 years, mi'ave ochalt, you know how many fruit you'd be able to eat? 0, zilch, nada, nothing, right? In other words, physically, it's true that right from the start, your ground is nourishing my trees. Halachically, only that bit of earth that I came with, I brought into the partnership, the bit of earth around the roots that allows the tree to be enjoyed. So really, halachically, if not for me, he had 0 access to any fruit. The only reason why those fruit are kosher halachically, I'm giving them the frum nourishment. You give the secular nourishment. I give them the heter. The heter to eat them came from my ground, the bit of earth that surrounds the roots, and not from the outer circle of your ground. And therefore, the first 3 years, out. After 3 years, then we can go back to normal and say, after 3 years, then you can come back to me and say, excuse me, Mr. Tree owner, if I had my trees here, I would be able to enjoy. Oh, then you're right. And then we can start playing fair and go half-half because it's your ground. Yeah, it's always irrelevant. So the fact that my gush came along doesn't make any difference anymore because 3 years anyway passed, right? And a new sapling, even if you balakarka would have brought, would be a nice kosher tree. And now we can play the normal game and say half for me and half for you. That's what we say now. We're going to reject it. Thank you for staying with me. Frag the Gemara. So that was for number 1. Frag the Gemara. Velei malei. Now, why can't we say that the Baal Karka? So again, let's just have in your mind a chart with before 3 and after 3, because that's how the Gemara is going to play the game. Before 3, we said up until now, no way you touch my tree, says who? The owner of the tree. Because if those trees wouldn't have come old and surrounded by my own land that I brought with me, your land would trace it up. For 3 years, halachically, you can't touch it. We're both from Eden. Both have to keep halacha, right? And after 3 years, that's when the rule of the Mishnah applies. Then all the problems have been removed. Then it's all back to normal. Then we go into the secular idea of shutfus. I bring the tree, you brought the land, we can fight it out, and Bezin will tell me half-half. So the Mishnah is limited to be speaking only after Orla was resolved. We're limiting the rule of the Mishnah for the past 3 years stage. That's what we're saying up until now. Now we're going to turn it around. Frag the Gemara velei malei. Why can't we say that the owner of the land can now retort back to the owner of the tree and say as follows? If I would have been, if I would be notea my own saplings, you know what would have happened after 3 years? After 3 years, for on and on and on, for 120, and all my trees can live for hundreds of years. You know that? I don't know, olive trees, yes, trees, some of them can. Yeah. After the first 3 years, after the halakha, yeah, then my plan would have been to eat all of the fruit all the time, right? Now, hashta, now, kachat palga badoi. You eating half together with me? No way. Which means what? Why should I give you half? I want all of it. That's not fair, but the trees belong to him. Says Tosfos, he says like this. Now you'll understand why I gave the introduction. You know why I kept so quiet and so nice when your trees came to my place and I was so nice about it? Because I figured like that. I figured that if it was my tree, I would have eaten it completely or only just me. I'm willing to split it half-half with you after 3 years, providing that within the first 3 years we should also go half-half. In other words, let's just balance it. If they 1 second. If they were my trees, it would be very clear-cut dichotomy, black and white. 3 years off, from 3 onwards, I'll be the only owner. I'll be eating them all day long and making money. Now you brought your trees into mine. I said, okay, I'm willing to go half-half after 3 years, but I'm losing 50%. But I'm only willing to do that providing that in the first 3 years, although you're right that without your land I can't eat it, but because I'm losing from the third year onwards, half, I'm willing to also gain within the first 3 years also half-half. In other words, instead of having zero for the first 3 years and 100% later, I want to balance it out and go half-half from the first second all the way to the end. That's why I kept quietly so nicely. And I didn't say, hey, get out of here. I want my own saplings. Because my own saplings, after 3 mingy years, will be mine forever. You know I kept quiet? Only because I'm willing to have quick profit now and having half-half right from the start, in spite of your svara. People may be asking now in your minds, what Toises is Maramis, excuse me, I brought the trees. You didn't have to invest. Excuse me, you told me I would have my own trees, your own saplings that cost money. Yeah, don't tell me, right, that's also a svara. If you be your own tree, you keep talking all the time. I'm the Turn Rabboni of the Zaysim owner. You, Balakarka, I would have had my own trees. Trees cost money, honey. I brought you free trees. So now for 3 years they'll be mine. And only after 3 they'll be half-half. Says Toisus, he's not asking, his maramis, they're very small. The amount of money you pay for netios, for small little saplings, is really nothing comparing to the whole big picture. Yeah, and therefore it's not a taina. Yeah, the amount of money you pay for that in relative to big trees and the whole life and the whole thing is nishka achia some grushim you can pay him back. And therefore the Gemara wants to reject that and say no. It's unfair to say that for 3 years it will be exclusively only the tree guy, and after 3 years it will go half-half. We're changing it now, Ella, and they were now saying something else. Kiyoso Rabin Omer Rish Lakish. Please note there was Ula quoting Rish Lakish. Now it's Rabin on behalf of Rish Lakish. What does it say? Lo shonu. You know when we said they go half-half? You know when they do go half-half, which is the Mishnah's rule? We always, like you call it, to pin the tail to the donkey. Where do we pin the halacha of the half-half of the Mishnah? That's only true. Elishanekru begushein ubetoch sholosh. If it's within the first 3 years and they were eradicated, they were uprooted with the gush around them, within the first 3 years, you should go half-half. Why? Because it's true that without your gush, nothing could have happened, but without the ground all around it, nothing could have happened either. Lamaisi, you're taking, I don't know if nothing, you're taking energy from the ground all around you, not just from the tiny bit. You should realize when trees grow in the ground, they suck from the energy of the ground. Says the Balakarka, it made me lose something from my ground right from the start. Wow. After 3 years, it all goes to Balakarka. From 3 years onwards, it's exclusively belonging to Balakarka. Why is that? Yomi says the Balakarka, the landowner, to the tree owner, if I would have planted my stuff, my trees, my saplings, which I'm fantasizing about, my would-be saplings, which I would have done, wouldn't have eaten everything. Yeah, I would have eaten it all exclusively mine. Why do you think I agreed to your trees staying here? I agree that they should stay here, only providing that what, by the way, soon we're going, if you have questions, we're going to deal with them soon. Yeah, but Lamaisa, I'm only willing to have your trees in my place if after 3 years they'll be completely mine. Frag the Gemara, wait a second. Now let's what? Let's defend Mr. Tree Owner. Because now the tree owner, what do we say? For 3 years they go half-half. After 3 years, why half-half? Because you're right. For the first 3 years, had it been my saplings, I would have eaten zero. Now I'm eating half and giving you half because it's your magnanimous idea to bring the gush with it. Oh, so you get half. But after the 3 years are over, they'll be completely owned by the, not owned, the Zaysim will own the fruit, will go to the landowner. Frag the Gemara, that's unfair. Velema frag the Gemara, velema lay, let the tree owner tell the landowner, "Iat natat betoch sholosh lo have ochalt." Excuse me, if you would have been planting the saplings, how much would have eaten within the first 3 years? Zero, 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 zero. Orla, hashtag ochas palga ba'adoi. Now you're eating half only because of me. Therefore, I deserve some schar and what? And I expect to get 50% also for the rest of the life. For the past 3 years, it's very similar to the other svara. Why being such a dichotomy thing? Zero, or let's do it all half-half. The first 3 years half, and past 3 years also half. Because the first 3 years say, thank you, get anything. You wouldn't have gotten it without me. You would have gotten zero. Because of me, you get half. So pay me back by giving me half after the 3 years. Answers the Gemara, Mishum de Omalei, and that's going to be the punchline. And this is a new factor here. Omalei, that will help us understand everything. Omalei, who answers back the landowner to the tree owner. Ianon nati, if I would have planted my saplings, teach me some English, please. What's the difference between a sapling and a tree? The size. A sapling is a tiny, cutesy little thing, although very, very thin, right? And a tree, we know the trees, as they grow older, they grow fatter, like, yeah, some human beings, yeah. In other words, they grow bigger and bigger. Had I gotten my saplings for the first 3 years, I wouldn't be such a miskin and a loser you portray me to be. You know what I would have done? I have a ktini. They would be small. Saplings usually are thin, and they allow more space for more stuff to grow. The zar'ana tchutayu, I would have planted or sown next to them, next to them, silka, vialka, beetroot, and all kinds of, cucumbers, the peppers, yeah. And now, what happens now? Now you brought big trees. You bought, yes, the trees that flew away that came with the river were adult. That's negative. So you also made me lose. It's so nice that only because of you and your amazing gush that came with the roots, that's why I could have eaten them, yes. But had I not have you here with your big, fat, humongous trees, I would have been able to have a whole line of products of another thing, yeah, because you cannot plant yerokos under the tree because it's too shady. And vegetables need the sun. That's the idea. It's mentioned over the Zohar in many places. That's agriculture. So now I would have made more space to all kinds of other things that I planted could have enjoyed right away. Vegetables, there's no orla of vegetables. So you're helping me, but you're also disturbing me at the same time. Great Mr. Magnanimous tree owner. You brought me ready-made zaysim, so to speak, but at the same time, you avoided other things. So at the end of the day, it evens out. And therefore, the first 3 years, I would go with you half-half. And from the third year onwards, the etzem, you're not helping me at all, and I would have the trees. Why would I add the trees? You may still ask the question. Go back to square one, and Baruch Hashem, I gave the introduction. Because the reason I kept quiet, I was like, these are nice trees growing over here. That be'etzem kilu showed I'm willing to have them here because I'm willing to have the profit. If I'm not having the profit, you're making me lose. I would have had my own trees. Yeah, imagine yourself, somebody, you have plan A, something to do in your dining room. The guy comes to your dining room and sits there, and when it may have been profitable to you somehow, he's selling something, I don't know, you would have done other things. So Lamaisi, the fact that the Zaysim are there and the big and sturdy right from the start means that from the third year onwards, the agreement of the Baal Karka, they kept so nice and quiet, was in order to make 100% profit from the Zaysim. Now, we have to continue because you guys may say it's not fair. The Zaysim at the end of the day belong to who? Belong to the Baal Zaysim, right? At the end of the day, that's what you guys may be asking. It's all very nice cheshbonis, but why should the landowner take everything of the Zaysim that belong to Baal Zaysim? Let's continue. It's not exactly the same halacha, but we have to continue and then say Toisfes, and then we'll understand everything. Now, Tana says the Brisa. Omar Halo, Zaysani Noitel, out of the game. That's unfair, says who? The Zaysim owner. After 3 years, these are my Zaysim that flew into here, right? It's true there's no consent. Your silent consent showed you want everything. I want out of the game. Out of the game. I'm taking my Zaysim, cutting them or uprooting them and putting them somewhere else. And Shoimin Loi. You don't listen to him, and he has to leave the Zaysim over there. Wow, 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 wow. He has to leave the Zaysim trees over there in the land of the landowner, and the landowner will have them. Soon you'll see the solution. My time. Why don't we listen to him if he wants out of the game? I thought divorce is legal in Yiddishkeit, and also divorce or forced partnership. Why can't he take them out and bring them back home? Wow. Because we want Eretz Israel to be full of trees. When you uproot a tree in Eretz Israel, this does not apply in America, not even in Lakewood, not even in England, not even in Gateshead, but this applies in Eretz Israel. If you have a tree in Eretz Israel, to uproot a tree in Eretz Israel is worse than anywhere else, and that is of itself is an offense. And therefore, Chazal didn't allow that. Omer Birmiya says Birmiya kigoin do sricha rabba kigoin do. Such a statement with such an interesting explanation only applies to Eretz Israel, not to Chutz La'aretz. Sricha rabba. It requires a great rov like Rabbi Yochanan to explain it to us. Meaning, I wouldn't have figured out that's pshat because of Eretz Israel. Says the Ritva, I wouldn't have said, the simple reader wouldn't have said it's because of Eretz Israel. It's simply you can't uproot it because Baal Karka can say, you already made me lose because you sucked the energy from my ground. You have to realize that. When the guy brings trees, it's not like somebody brings a box into your house. He's sucking the energy, taking from the goodness of the earth, right? And the Baal HaKarka cannot benefit because you're going to take it away. It's like he took something from Baal HaKarka and then he takes away the trees. It's unfair. Let me enjoy them at least after you took away from my land's energy. But the Gemara says, no, that's not enough of a reason. The reason is what? Really, the reason is because of Eretz Israel, as Baruch mentioned before. Look at the third Tosfos, because we still have a question. We still have a question. It's all very nice, but something unfair is going on here, right? Because the Baal Zaysim, it flew into the guy's field, right? Now 3 years was half-half. For the rest of the life, his own olive trees, which is true. They're getting the nourishment from the ground, and he's making the ground guy lose. But the tree is originally mine, and I'm forced to leave them here and watch him eating my Zaysim, says the third Tosfos. The Zaysim should stay there, says Tosfos. If they all belong to Baal Karka, is the Zaysim guy losing? There's something in the world, I don't know if you heard about it, called money. Baal Karka eating Dmei HaZaysim, Moshe Shavim Mikol Netiyos. Lovely. Pashut, you'll pay the money to Baal HaZaysim. In other words, if Baal HaZaysim doesn't mind, and after 3 years it says, Gendik, Kapora, Beseder, let him stay there. After 3 years, let him eat my Zaysim. Yeah, I enjoyed it while it lasted, in Elam Haba, it's going to be okay. V'chulei, I'm a Moichel Toives. I listen to Rabbi Melech Biderman all the time, and he says to be Moichel. Good, very nice. If after 3 years ago, eating my Zaysim in your land and I can't even take them back, money. The Baal Karka should pay him like what? Like the Zaysim as they're worth to sell for Netios, the same value, not the full value. You are basically, you had your trees for a while. It's as if it's a one-off sale, right? It doesn't have to pay for all the Zaysim is going to eat for life, right? When you buy an oven, you pay one-off payment. You don't pay for all the bread and the cakes you're gonna bake your entire life, right? So you get a one-off payment of the value of the trees as if they are netios, as if they are newly, freshly planted things, and that's it. So Lamaisa, he got the payment. Yeah, he leaves the Eitzim Bahim because of Yisrael soil. We don't want to eradicate trees. Mr. Zaysim owner is fuming. Give him money. Yeah, give him money because he's not interested in his Zaysim staying by him and eating by him. It's a forced sale. It's a forced sale, not forced marriage. Why is it a forced sale? For the honor of Eretz Yisrael. We all love Eretz Yisrael. You guys all made Aliyah from all beautiful places. You should relate to that. And therefore, very good. And therefore, because of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, the Zaysim should stay where they are. And the owner of the Zaysim should be compensated with three things: kesef, money, and guilt. Next sugya after your questions. let me summarize actually first. Let me summarize and then here are questions. Then we're going to go to this. Ooh, we're running behind schedule. We may have some of the shiur tomorrow too. Okay. So I'll just summarize. Bekitzer, when the Gemara said that, to go half, the tree owner, the trees, some were swept into where they were swamped and swept into the new land of the landowner. They start growing there. For the first 3 years, if they were brought with a bit of dirt around them that can make them survive and make them not reset to be 0 years old, then the only reason why those trees can be bichlal eaten halachically is because of the tree owner. And the tree owner, the landowner Lemais is also supporting something here. They go FF. From the 3rd year onwards, we say no. The only reason why the Baal HaKarka kept so nice and quiet about it till now is simply because he imagined in his mind that eventually, instead of his own Matthias, which would be more profitable, they would have allowed him to grow an entirely different species. He was planning on small clay zaysim, tiny cutesy saplings with tons of tomatoes and cucumbers and peppers around them. You came with your things and with your big trees, you helped him and disturbed him at the same time. So it's like, okay. So after 3 years, you can say, listen, after 3 years, I would have eaten 100% of mine. I want 100% now. Either trees are yours, I'll pay you. I'll pay you for the saplings and goodbye. It's that simple. Yes. Okay, we will not continue for now. We're in the middle of the page in Tanan Hosom. See you tomorrow, Metzia Hashem, and Tzlachua. But tomorrow we're going to have a Gemara shiur, and at the end of the Gemara shiur, we're going to have some words of Hashkafa, Jewish philosophy. Okay, in honor of Ben Azmanim. I'm afraid Netanyahu will not be here tomorrow. I do hope Mashiach will be here tomorrow. So as much as I'm pro-government, but I think Mashiach will be the real solution. Tu B'Av is the day of unity. Tu B'Av is the day not to fight. Why? One of the 5 good things happening in Tu B'Av is that the Shvatim, the different tribes, are allowed to marry into each other. So let's be all united and greet Mashiach soon. Thank you very much. Atzlocha uvrocha.